Robert Craddock, the wisdom and experience of. Hello to you, Crash.
G'day, Gerard. Yeah, there's a lot of love there for Josh Inglis, isn't there? And I must admit, I've had to re-rate him too. And, I'm wondering whether he's our sort of Brendan McCullum for New Zealand, like that sort of took the gloves occasionally, batted occasionally, did everything with a lot of daring do. And he's looking... there's a very, very small group of players that have scored centuries in all formats for their country, the three formats. Steve Smith hasn't, and so Inglis has. And every time he bats, he just looks a 360-degree player. Remember, Warney was one of the first onto him when he coached him in England in the 100 over there, said, this guy's got a bit of magic about him, hasn't he? And, Warney gets crushes on players, and we thought, here we go. But he was right. As always, SK Warner ahead of the game.
How brutal was his pull shot?
Oh, yeah. And the thing is, you're playing players with... Mark Wood was bowling at 151 kilometres an hour. Jofra Archer was bowling at high speed, Bryden Carr. So you got the speed to play with, and he utilised that. And it almost looked premeditated, didn't it? It was brutal. There were all sorts of threads came out of that game. Like, I'm watching Archer and Wood very, very closely, because I think England are going to try this very unusual and interesting plan against Australia in the Ashes next summer, where they play each of them in a couple of tests and say, go hard and then go home. And they may go pop, as Mark Ward so often does. But jeepers, if you can push the speedometer to 151.2 on a spicy Perth deck, that is serious heat. Like, this Ashes series, Gerard, I reckon it'll be the best one we've had in Australia here this century. It'll have twists and turns and, team changes and, hostile fast bowling. It's going to be wonderful.
Well, that's a beautiful setup. The bit I liked about this game, because we've seen before, is what happens in white ball cricket can reverberate, is Australia took 226 from the three quicks at 8.5 and over. And England seemed determined to bowl short, and they paid an enormous price for it.
Yeah, I think they averaged nearly 2 runs and over for short balls against the Australians, and that was from their quicks. And quite clearly, I think it almost had this little hidden message from the Ashes, as in, this what's coming to you, boys. But it's one thing bouncing on Optus Oval in Perth, where you get a bit of spring, than, on the ultra-flat subcontinental decks, where you just can't, you just can't get that same leverage. But I just thought it was superb. And Inglis is driving Alex Carey to fresh heights. I really do believe that. Carey in the field, of course, was wonderful. Then he came in with a beautiful 60. But even this summer, Carey's test average is up to 35 now, Gerard. That's outstanding. That's really, really good. If he that says he could hold his place in the Australian team as a specialist batsman. Be right on the edge, but he could do it. So, that's so I like the way these two keepers are working together and kneeling each other upwards. It's great.
It breaks a few conventions, doesn't it, Crash? So Inglis played as a specialist batter in the tests. Carey's playing as a specialist batter in the 50-over game, and they're both making it work.
They are, and I think the plans are very fluid, although Carey will play in the Ashes, he'll play in the World Championship final against South Africa. But, after that, who knows? But the question is not so much about Carey, but where does Inglis fit in? Like, is he good enough to play in the middle order? Is he a stormtrooper at opening the batting, or number 3? He's just... As I said, I'm just not sure what he is. I'm not sure how good he is. I'm not sure what the ceiling of Inglis is. I think, it's because his first-class average has hovered around 35 in Shield cricket, that I've never thought he could be that batsman who could really be the long-lasting test match specialist in a McCullum sort of way. But maybe he is. Gerard, have you made up your mind about him?
Yeah, so, my view at the start of the summer was he would have played in my team, as I would have made that change after Perth, because he was in such good red ball form, as well as what we'd seen in the white ball. And so There's a phrase you've said to me before, Crash, you can't afford to waste form like this. And that's where I sit with Inglis. He's in every one of my starting teams now. You can't afford to waste a player like this in the form that he's in. And I'm prepared to rejig things to have him in there.
Yeah, and he's putting incredible pressure on a guy like Marnus Labuschagne, And Labuschagne was good in that game again. He helped turn the innings around. And I can see what's happening here, Gerard, in this tournament. Marnus will make a few good innings and he'll sneak into the World Championship final at Lords against South Africa. But or will he? But you're right. He's putting pressure on everyone, and he just could be that guy in an era where in a talent group, an age group where they didn't think they had anyone. Suddenly they've got Inglis, and he could be a really important bridging man between generations. Before the next group of batsmen arrive, he could be that guy that carries the Kawajas and the Smiths towards. He fills in the gap between their departure and the arrival of the next big guns.
So the bowling it's the understudies, and you could tell right from the outset how good a pitch that was. So the scoring quickly never bothered me. You knew it was going to be a big chase, but there was a period where England were on track for 400 and 400 and a bit. There was just a 5-over block, and Zampa clearly played a role in that. Australia just did enough. They couldn't get Duckett out, but they just did enough to hold them up for 5 overs, which meant it was 351 instead of 400. So I've just felt like it's almost impossible for Australia to win the tournament with the team that they've got. But this was just full of merit, this performance, as everyone just did their bit.
Yeah, it did. And I reckon it really hurt England because, Gerard, it's one thing to lose when you play badly and you say, some of our shots and everything. But guess what? That was roughly about as good as they can play, as they can bat, certainly. And it's a really humbling experience when you've got, hey, our Big Ashes guns were sitting at home. Their Big Ashes guns were warming up in the game. Well, there in the game, Jofra Archer and Mark Wood. That's that's their twin cannons for the Ashes. So, in other words, that loss really stunned them. And I just listened to their post-match press conferences, I could sense they were saying that. And they said, look, we didn't play badly. And that's when a loss really hurts, when you pretty much throw what you've got on the table. And guess what? It's not good enough. So it did hurt them. And I thought the bowlers, this is a great opportunity for them. It's not the World Cup. There's not this aching pressure with everything. They've got to cross the line to a good first-up victory. So, it's a great chance for guys who've been waiting in the queue for years. And, I thought they were serviceable. And once again, Zampa, just when you need him, just put a slight handbrake on, didn't he? So, yeah, that was good.
So Australia in white ball tournaments do have an aura. This is not the first choice team. Could they use this aura to conjure something special?
Absolutely. Do you know what? In tournament after tournament, since they had when they won those 3 World Cups in a row from 1999 in England and then South Africa in 2003 and the West Indies in 2007, barely losing a game. I think, what was their winning streak or non-losing streak? About 20 games. I just think when Australia turns up in a white ball ICC tournament in their yellow gear, for some reason, it's a bit like the All Blacks in rugby union. They might have their second 11 in, but they're still the All Blacks.
Yep.
And it does. I reckon if they get to a semi-final and the team that plays them are going, oh, here we go, Australia. So that it is there. I thought that the other night when they won. I thought in all these ICC tournaments, there's still this thing where Australia has just, and it's not pronounced, and it may not get them across the line every time, but I reckon it's there, Gerard. We're Australia. You reckon you're good enough? Come and get us. See how you go. And sometimes the swagger works, and other times it doesn't.
Okay, I just want an extra note here. I especially like the innings of Matt Short. So it just felt like he's been going too hard too soon at the start of his Australian career in 50-over matches. But on Saturday night, he just found the tempo. He he was crisp with his clips and he was opening the blade. He didn't really unload the heavy artillery until he was fully set. It was 35 balls in or thereabouts. And then he went and he got to 63 to set a base. I just felt like he found the right pacing, probably for the first time for Australia.
Yeah, he almost let the ball, sorry, Jared, he almost let the ball come to him. And when I was watching him, I thought of Ricky Ponting's advice to Fraser McGurk, where he said, don't swing at 100%, swing at 80%, keep 20%. That's when you time the ball. And that's what Short looked to be doing to me, just keeping that 20% up his sleeve. Because on those grounds, in those conditions, you don't have to go at 100%, particularly early when there's a lot of field restrictions. And you're right, his last couple of years have been a little bit disappointing for Australia in that, and I saw the hype and intensity of T20 cricket. You come in and there's so much pressure to get moving, isn't there? And he looked smooth, and he watched the game almost come to him rather than just being in this frenzied attack mode from ball one.
A lot to like for Australia at the start of their Champions Trophy. India and Pakistan last night. It's a sneaky good tournament, the Champions Trophy. I know not everybody is there, but you get straight to the games that matter as World Cups meander along for the first 2 or 3 weeks. That was the high point of Pakistan and India in Dubai. It wasn't quite the crowd that you would have expected. Certainly when I was watching early, Pakistan were underwhelming, so they're out of the tournament, a tournament that they're hosting, but it is compromised because India can't go in and play in that country. Crash, how did you feel about what is supposed to be the showpiece of the tournament?
Yeah. Oh, look, I often feel that these matches, Pakistan go into panic mode more than India do, because it means they're desperate to beat their big brothers sort of thing, and they almost over-try. But you're right. Like, over the years when they've thought about scrapping the Champions Trophy, Gerard, apparently around the table someone always says, yeah, but it's one of the few times when India and Pakistan play, and that silences everything. Someone then says, yeah, you're right, we've got to keep it. And this is the, as you say, the showpiece and the high point. And the prime purpose of the tournament, really. And so it was not an epic game, but Kohli, he was smart. He read it beautifully, coming in at 2 for 100 and just a century at about a run a ball. He knows that third gear tempo where you just sort of, it's the one where he's probably existed best in his entire career, where you're moving swiftly, but not at breakneck pace, just sort of quietly forcing the tempo. And he had a little address to the team before the game saying, guys, let's just relax today and enjoy this. It's hard. It's easy to say, hard to do, but just do it. And he looked that player. He actually looked quite relaxed throughout the innings. So, yeah, he's continues to stutter on. The best of him is gone. He's been out of form for a long time. But great players have these little star bursts when the juices are flowing, and suddenly you can just go out one day and it just happens.
Yeah, it emphasises his. So we talked about Inglis and the 3 formats. Kohli is the greatest of the 3 format players, and it all burgeoned right in the sweet spot of his career. And what is that, 51 centuries for India?
Yeah, and 14,000 international runs, it's just, you think of that, Gerard, it's incredible that and he is the ultimate professional. I mean, I remember John Wright used to tell the story when he was coaching India. The first thing he did was ban sedan chairs at training. There was guys used to sit back on couches, and he told this beautiful anecdote in his book where one of his batsmen was in the gym on a stationary bike, and he had sandals on and was eating a muesli bar. And Matthew Hayden walked in and saw Wrighty talking to this guy, and he said, I knew exactly what Hayden was thinking. He looked at me and thought, gee, Roddy, you've really got that guy fizzing, haven't you? Now, the point I'm getting to here is that was the old India. Kohli's professionalism, the skin folds that he copied off Novak Djokovic and the diets and all that, that's the new India. So even if he's out of form, and he has been, he still leaves that legacy of a guy that changed the system.
All right. On an Australian front, 2 big debates back home last week. Matthew Kuhneman's gone through the private testing. What do you know?
Yeah, gone through the private testing. There should be some announcement within the next couple of days. They normally say 7 to 10 days. Look, I know that he is, obviously very, very upset by it, as you would be after coming off a career high. And the testing was apparently as brutally cold as it has to be. Quite quiet. A guy has to bowl at his regular speed. In the old days, we used to laugh, Gerard, at the testing about 25 years ago when a guy would go in and bowl with a deliberately straight arm at about three-quarter pace. Well, you can't do that anymore because they measure the speed, and you can't bowl at a straight arm and put no spin on it because they measure your revolutions as well. So all that was done. Those results have been sent away. And the verdict is big because if he comes back innocent, then the pressure then slightly goes on to the singular umpire who reported him to match referee Jeff Crow and was quite belligerent about it. And if he comes back guilty, the issue is how could a guy play 200 professional games of cricket before more than 50 umpires and hasn't changed his action for 7 years? And no one's reported him. So that will be the two sides of the debate when the verdict is handed down.
And the other last week, which was transfixing, was Sam Konstas. How did you take him in?
Oh, well, it was such a poor shot against Scott Boland. I mean, it's Andrew Webster wrote a very good column in the Australian about he rang up Greg Shipperd and he said, "Oh, look, I heard that you gave him a rocket when he got back to the dressing room." The New South Wales coach. Shipperd denied it, but he said, "No, but I did speak to him the next morning, but I waited because I spoke to Andrew McDonald just to make sure we all want to be on the same page." So I reckon he's been given the message that, Sam, we didn't mind you tripping the light fantastic in that little innings against Boxing Day, but that can't be the staple of you going forward. Like to move outside the off stump and try to hoik a ball which took middle and leg stump from the excellent Scott Boland. I mean, that is no one's idea of a Test career. That's so. If you take away his innings in Melbourne, Gerard, he sort of struggled a bit, and his 2 centuries this summer. So I've still got him in that World Test Championship side, but I've gone from last week. I had him about an 8. Now I've got him about a 7. What's your verdict?
Yeah,
what have you got him?
I think that's right. I think we're all fascinated on the outside, but the internal is to watch him bat over the next 2 innings. So I watched his innings in the one day yesterday, and he was nowhere. He just couldn't get going, and that's okay. That happens from time to time. So he's got a lot sitting on the next 2 Sheffield Shield games. Just the manner and the mode in which he's going to bat and whether he's going to be successful or not. Because as you rightly point out, there's suddenly a lot of Australian batters in form, and there's maybe more choices than there were for a while. He is Australia's long-term opener. I feel unrelenting on that, but he's got to find his way now.
It's interesting, Gerard, because we mentioned Virat Kohli and how he lives in third gear. Sam Konstas has got first, where he just defends, and he's got fifth and a little bit of fourth. But I'll tell you what he hasn't got at the moment is second and third, and that's where you play most of your cricket. Seriously. That's where and pick any batsman you like, David Warner, Ricky Ponting, second and third gear is where you spend most time. And so I watched him up here at the Gabba play one scoring shot and 33 balls before he got out, and then he went down and tried to hoik Scott Boland. So he's got those two modes, but it's the meat and potatoes he hasn't got. He's got the gravy and he's got the pavlova when it comes off, but he hasn't got the carrots, the peas, and the potatoes. So I am enjoying this journey of discovery. Pat Cummins made a good comment the other day, I think, where he said, look, I'd rather a guy showed a lot of intent and you had to wind him back than the other way around. Some guys are too conservative. Gerard, that's a good point. But there is also the opposite argument, and I'll tell you what it is. Some guys say, oh, you can build your game around a good defence early and then suddenly quietly expand. So he's finding himself, Konstas. It's an interesting watch. I'm really enjoying it. I
Yep.
mean, look, we've just spent 5 minutes. It's a beautiful topic. I was just down to the service station filling up the car, and the guy I met said, mate, just before you go, we're talking, what about Konstas?
Yes.
These are the debates I love about cricket. People are talking, he's got people talking about cricket. It's a great thing.
He's the most interesting young player we've had on the landscape in a long time, and he is 19, so of course he's not the finished product. So it's fascinating to see it. Crash, we got multiple messages around Mitch Owen and what he did yesterday, 149 off 69 balls. Gerard and Crash, what I love most on the weekend came yesterday, and it wasn't fully related. Mitch Owen played another brilliant innings in Tasmania's one-day game against ladder leader South Australia, 149 off 69 balls. It begs the question, how far can this young man go? Rob from Bayswater. And Dale texts through, Mitch Owen's arrival on the cricket stage in the past 3 months is something I haven't witnessed, probably since Gilchrist established his batting, striking early in his Test career. His striking yesterday was sublime, be that not an international attack, but an attack that had been successful this season. He has to be picked firstly, but I'd love to know the conversation that the selectors are having presently a serious cricketing talent. This is the batter who lit up the BBL final, and he was just dynamite yesterday.
Yeah, do you know what? I do know this. They are talking about him, like not in a terms of, oh, look, where do we fit him in? But they really watching him closely, Mitch Owen. Isn't he an interesting player? Like he at first class level, he hasn't done much yet. He's played 13 games and averaged 27. Still no hundreds, but a strike rate of 86. So he sort of goes hard and goes home. And the fascinating thing about him is he's sort of like their second Bo Webster. Big, tall guy, comes from a town south of Hobart, bowls a bit of off spin, a bit of medium pace as well. Hard hitter, long limbs. And honestly, Gerard, he could end up anywhere. Like he could end up fast track to the IPL. Like he could be one of these guys. Is he a Tim David? Do you think he's going to be summoned onto the T20 circuit? Like, he's already been to Dubai. They've just, swooped on him and, for a few games. So he's another guy his career will be fun to watch. And it's almost as if he's been, that innings in the Big Bash final just, catapulted him into a world watch. So I'll be fascinating. But when a guy's in this sort of form, you can talk about potential openings here and there. They just tend to get places quickly. With there's 3 Australian teams operational, there's a lot of places, up for grabs, and he will at age 23, the world's at his feet.
Yep. This has been such a great summer to open up possibilities. Even watching, Campbell Callaway has been a long-term prospect for Victoria, made his century in the ODI yesterday. Harry Dixon looks great. We're waiting to see Ollie Peake on that front as well. So it just feels like, having been pretty staid for a long period of time, there's just a wave in Australian cricket happening everywhere at the moment. It is to really light the future.
It is, and things sort of look so shallow about when we lost. Remember when we lost that first Test in Perth? And I remember writing a thing saying, "Where are the replacements, Gerard?" And suddenly they're all gushing through, aren't they? But look, I still think there will be also a reality check. I still think when you lose, when Stark, Hazelwood and Cummins fade, there'll be that series where we just realised how great they were because they're not there. And I know that some of the domestic results are really shining, and Mitch Owen is a great story. Like, he's got a strike rate in T20 cricket if you go at 140, you say, gee, well, that's good. 150, wow, you're a trailblazer. He goes at 182 runs per 100 balls. I mean, that is staggering as a career strike rate. I mean, that is a Ferrari. My goodness. So, but what is he? Is he just a white ball, whacker? Is he more than that? So we'll have to wait and see.